Their Fated Travels, Chapter 2. The Scene of Murder. Seen and unseen. Malvanius led them outside, Maestro, Tordrad, and Rysandria. They were expecting to see a coach there ready to take them away to the city jail, but no such thing happened. They were led across the mismatching cobbled street with a squad of witch hunters in tow, to an alleyway 2 roads away from the inn. Upon reaching the murder scene, Tordrad's jaw firmed up, and his eyes took on a look of wild shock and anger. Rysandria looked at the 2 mutilated bodies and assorted macabre paraphernalia about them with a look of sympathy, draining the last of her high spirits away. Even though they were dead, she guessed what they must have suffered, what they still were suffering, judging by the symbols present. Maestro dropped the last of his apple, and the piece already in his mouth stuck out where he couldn't bring himself to chew any longer. The witch hunter captain had been studying their faces for a sign of anything that could incriminate them, any sign that this scene was not a new image to them. He found nothing suspicious, but remained silent anyway. Malvanius started.
2 bodies. These men knew each other. They were in the inn with you all last night. This one with his insides spread across the wall in a pattern. He was seen mistreating you last night, Miss Vore.
Rysandria nodded sadly.
The other, a sailor, was present also, and had a discussion with you, Miss Vore. That makes you a dangerous woman to be having words with.
The woman held her tongue in place, as she did not like the feel of the words that were trying to come out at that moment. They were not befitting of a lady, and especially not of one who sought to become a Shallian priestess. The witch hunter asked,
When they left, you were angry at them, weren't you?
Rysandria nodded. Of course I was. They were both beyond belief. I would remind you that those of my order maintain an oath to aid the sick and dying, not add to them. Malvanius laughed coldly and for longer than seemed appropriate.
Corruption is everywhere. You're too young and naive to realize this, and that makes you a danger in itself.
The weight of the arrests he'd made in the past were there in the back of his tone. People in the highest seats of superiority had come under his watchful eye and been judged as criminals. He wore his cynicism on his sleeve for all to see, but only if you were perceptive enough to realize it. Rysandria was. Maestro remained silent, not wanting to be implicated. Tordrad was less upset by the gore, for he had seen it all before on the battlefields of Kislev. He was more shaken up by the chaos imagery drawn across the walls in the blood and entrails of these 2 men. They were severely mutilated. Someone who was truly evil had to be responsible for this, he was sure. Just at that moment, a small man around 5 feet 3 inches tall joined them in the alleyway. The witch hunters were about to pounce on him, but Malvanius waved him to come closer. The man had an awkward build, thin, too thin even for his height, and somewhat stooped in his resting stance. This didn't show in his walk, however. He moved along on a walking staff, the like of which would be carried by men when they went into the hill pathways, or simply if they were becoming less steady on their feet. He did certainly seem to rest his weight into the staff as if he needed it. The new man looked at the bodies and nodded his head. Malvanius asked,
Refreshed from last night, I assume?
Perfectly, thank you, came the man's reply. His voice sounded educated. Those who were gathered outside could see that they were in the company of an academic. Earlier that night, shortly after Malvanius had found the bodies, he had looked up and to the left where his eye had caught the bright lantern light shining through the window of the house at the end of the alleyway. Its light naturally illuminated part of the outside surroundings, including a portion of the alley. A decisive smile had crept across his face as he made his way towards the house. He'd given a secret hand sign to another witch hunter standing nearby. This second man had sprung away immediately down the side alley of the house. 3 sharp knocks were answered by an irritated voice calling, "Wait a minute!" Soon the door was answered by a short man. His curled black hair could not be seen under his surgeon's hat. His face was rough, as if suited to a less refined class, yet he dwelled in an expensive house. Mental notes were being made. Malvanius stared at the man standing at the door, and inquired,
"Do you know what has happened out here tonight?"
his eyes darting just past the man and into his hallway beyond to look for anything of interest on display. "No, I've been too busy working on this cadaver," came the reply from the man. Malvanius almost fell over backwards. How blatant a confession! But then he realized the man had been gesturing to the inside of his house. "Come, you can see if you wish," he'd added. He led a silently shocked Malvanius through into the front room containing the bright lantern that had caught his attention so readily before. He could tell that the room, and indeed the house, belonged to a physician, but based on the furniture and art pieces, one of considerable years beyond this man's, who he estimated to be around 27 years old. The man gestured to a work slab that had a corpse upon it. It had been cut open, and its insides were being removed and stored in large brine-filled medical jars. Everything had been done professionally, methodically, medically, Malvanius noticed. The proper tools that one would use, he observed, were upon a nearby metal tray atop a small trolley. The man seemed to read the witch hunter's mind and stated, "This is one Mrs. Jaren. She died of an overdose, so they say. My teacher has assigned me the task of finding the truth in the matter as part of my medical study." Malvanius's quick eyes surveyed the paper lying on the desk, with its official death certificate wax seal upon it, and quickly got back to summing up the character of the man standing before him.
"I see," Malvanius said. "So you have been in all evening?"
"I have been working here all through the night, yes," came the man's reply. "Becoming a doctor is no easy feat, and working with the dead is of course part of that training. How can I assist you, though? Can I get you any refreshments?" The witch hunter captain scratched his chin and blinked his eyes. He was still tired from sleep deprivation tonight. The last few nights had been bad as well.
"I carry my own canteen, thank you."
"As you wish," answered the man.
"But you can answer some questions for me,"
said Malvanius. The man calmly nodded at this. Malvanius continued.
"The murder scene is close to this house. Did you see anyone move in or out of that opposite alleyway tonight?"
The man replied, "I saw or heard no one, I'm afraid. My work kept me busy here. What a shame that someone had lost their life so close to me. I might have been able to help him, her." Malvanius knew his trap hadn't been set off, so he loosed the truth from its restraints he'd kept it in.
"Actually, there were 2 bodies, both men. Some suspicious marks are upon them."
The young apprentice doctor started. "Sorry, where are my manners? I am Dieter Diath. This is my tutor's house, but I stay over to complete my training on his assigned nights." Malvanius asked.
"Why only nights?"
The man replied, "I work nights because I am an insomniac who also suffers from oniromancy. More would have words with me. I dread what I might see when I close my eyes. I do not want to see the future any more." Malvanius considered the man's name. Diath? It wasn't too uncommon, but it was always interesting to encounter. Families would often put an apostrophe somewhere in the name to lessen its morbid meaning. Truth be told, though, the word was truly death, regardless of how many apostrophes were used. Malvanius asked,
"Where is the master of the house, then?"
The man replied, "I haven't seen him all night. He has been out, perhaps on calls. I'm not worried. It's perfectly normal for him.